The night ended in whispers and gasps. As the doors of the Russell mansion closed, the damage had already been done. Clara's accusation wasn't just a scandal, it was a warning. And now, in episode 3, the cracks in high society start to split. Wide open, Clara's outburst at the charity luncheon left everyone stunned. Though many pretended not to hear, the shock rippled through the drawing rooms and ballrooms of New York like wildfire. Her words had targeted the wrong person at the wrong time, or maybe just the right one. As episode 3 begins, we see the high society reeling. With whispers behind closed doors and reputations under threat, Marian Brooke finds herself caught in the middle. Her loyalty to Clara has cost her trust among the elite. Agnes Van Ryn, always sharp with her judgments, wastes no time warning Marian to keep her distance. But Marian is torn, her heart pulls her toward truth and compassion, while her status forces her into silence. She starts to see the cost of playing the polite game of the rich. In this episode, Marian's innocence starts to break. She learns that silence is sometimes safer but never kinder. Meanwhile, Bertha Russell stands tall but not untouched. She's building a new kind of power, one based not on old family names but bold moves and spectacle. The social gatekeepers had tried to shut her out, but she responded with brilliance and force. Still, the elite women of New York remain divided. Some are beginning to fear her, others are tempted by her rising influence. One misstep, though, and it could all fall apart. That's why Bertha's planning something bigger, a ball that could reshape everything. George Russell, facing pressure from rival businessmen, starts making dangerous deals. He knows the social war his wife is fighting affects his empire too. Enemies outside the ballroom now threaten inside his boardroom. In episode 3, George begins to tighten his circle and test loyalties. Old allies show their teeth, and his rivals see an opening. He remains calm, but the tension around him grows. For George, every handshake now carries risk, and then there's Oscar Van Ryn, restless and calculating. Still hiding the truth of his personal life, Oscar begins to drift toward a new scheme. He watches the chaos unfold and looks for his chance to rise. In a world built on image, Oscar plays the part well, but how long until the mask slips? As the episode unfolds, the characters face choices that pull them deeper into the web of wealth, ambition, and secrets. Betrayal doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it arrives in silence, behind a smile, in the flicker of a glance across the room. Episode 3 sets the stage for transformation. Trust is breaking. Power is shifting. And the game of appearances is more dangerous than ever before. The invitations were silk-lined, hand-delivered, and impossible to ignore. Bertha Russell's upcoming ball was more than just a social gathering. It was a challenge to the old guard. Those who dismissed her before now found themselves staring at the invitation with both excitement and fear. This wasn't just another evening of dancing and gossip. This was a test of loyalty, power, and status, and Bertha planned every detail to send a message. As the guests arrived, the Russell mansion shimmered like something out of a dream. Golden candlelight reflected off polished marble, and towering floral arrangements framed the sweeping staircases. No expense had been spared. Everything about the evening screamed opulence, but underneath the glamour was calculation. Bertha didn't just want admiration, she wanted submission. And with each guest that walked through her door, she was getting closer to that goal, but not everyone came with good intentions. Mrs. Astor, who once held New York society in the palm of her hand, walked in like a queen, but this time without her usual calm. She was dressed to impress, but her smile never reached her eyes. She knew Bertha was encroaching on her kingdom, and this ball might be the moment it all tips. She watched carefully, taking note of who greeted Bertha with warmth and who kept their distance. Every glance was a move in the larger game. Across the room, Oscar Van Ryn sipped champagne, charming the daughters of wealthy men with practiced ease. But his attention kept drifting to one particular guest, a newly arrived heiress from Chicago, rumored to be both rich and single. Oscar's motives, as always, weren't romantic. He needed her money and her name, a new opportunity to mask the truth he was still hiding. The ball gave him a perfect opening. Marian stood near the edge of the ballroom, unsure where she belonged. She had received the invitation, but not the acceptance. Bertha welcomed her with a kind smile, but many of the other women barely nodded. Marian noticed it, she felt it. Still, she watched and learned. She saw how Bertha maneuvered through the room like a queen on a chessboard, gracious to some, cold to others. This wasn't a party. It was war, wrapped in silk and music. Meanwhile, George Russell kept close to the walls, observing conversations that weren't meant for his ears. He noticed a rival rail baron speaking too comfortably with a foreign investor. He didn't interrupt, not yet, but his mind was already working, plotting his countermove, calculating what that handshake might cost. For George, the ball wasn't a break from work. It was business, just with better lighting. Then came the unexpected. A late guest arrived, someone no one had seen in years. A name that once held power but had vanished after scandal. As they walked, whispers spread like fire. Bertha's expression didn't flicker, but her eyes locked onto the guest. This, too, was part of the night's story. Her story. As the orchestra swelled and the first dance began, the ball transformed. Behind the dresses and diamonds, everyone was playing their role. Deals were being hinted at, alliances whispered, secrets traded with a smile. And Bertha stood at the center of it all, watching, waiting, winning, because in the Gilded Age power isn't taken with swords. It's stolen with silence, sealed with a dance, and displayed in a room full of people pretending to be friends. Asterisk beneath the glittering chandeliers and polite laughter, something far more dangerous than gossip was unfolding. The ballroom had become a stage, but behind the curtains, secrets were moving like shadows. In episode 3, relationships that once seemed stable begin to crumble, and new alliances form in whispers too soft for music to drown out. The real game had begun. Marian Brooke, once the wide-eyed newcomer, is no longer blind to the truth. Her faith in love and decency has been tested, and now she's forced to see people as they are, not as she wishes them to be. In this episode, she discovers something heartbreaking. Clara, the friend she defended, has been keeping something from her. It's not just the social backlash that hurts, it's the realization that trust comes with a price. Marian is faced with a choice: forgive and fall in line, or walk away from the comfort of acceptance. For the first time, she begins to choose independence. Meanwhile, Bertha Russell is rewriting the rules of society, but she knows she can't win with style alone. During the ball, she pulls aside Mr. Winterton, an influential banker with ties to old money. Their quiet conversation in the gallery seems innocent, but beneath their smiles is a deal. Bertha offers him access to a new industrial project, something George has been preparing behind the scenes. In return, she expects loyalty and a little pushback against Mrs. Astor's control of the city's social calendar. It's not business. It's strategy. Bertha is building her empire piece by piece, and no one even sees the map. George Russell, however, is facing a storm of his own. An anonymous letter reaches him just before the ball, one that hints at betrayal inside his own company. A trusted partner might be leaking plans to a competitor. George doesn't react publicly, but his mind races. Throughout the night, he tests conversations, asks careful questions, and watches every reaction. One handshake lasts a second too long. One toast is just a little too forced. George is closing in on the traitor, but if he's wrong, he could destroy the alliance that's keeping his empire strong. And then there's Oscar Van Ryn, always charming, always scheming. But in episode 3, Oscar finds himself cornered. The Chicago heiress he's been courting reveals something unexpected. She knows about his past. Not all of it, but enough to be dangerous. She doesn't reject him. Instead, she offers a deal of her own, protection in exchange for honesty. Oscar, for the first time, feels the balance shift. He's not the only one playing the game anymore. Now he's being played elsewhere. Peggy Scott, whose story has always been quietly powerful, uncovers a deeper betrayal at the newspaper. Her writing, her truth is being edited, softened, even censored to protect powerful names. In episode 3, she begins her own quiet rebellion. She meets with a rival publisher who offers her the freedom to write honestly, but the offer comes with a cost leaving behind the comfortable connections she's built. For Peggy, it's a question of purpose. Stay safe or speak louder? As these relationships twist and tangle, the ball comes to a close, but the real stories are only just beginning. Love becomes leverage, truth becomes a weapon, and behind every dance and delicate compliment, someone is planning their next move, because in the Gilded Age, affection can be faked, but ambition never hides for long. The final scenes of episode 3 aren't loud, but they leave echoes. As the ballroom empties and the music fades, what's left behind isn't just champagne flutes and crushed roses, it's the beginning of a quiet revolution. Power is shifting, and those who thought they were in control are beginning to feel the ground slip beneath them. Bertha Russell, the hostess of the night, stands alone at the top of the staircase once the guests are gone. The last dance is over, the last smile exchanged, but she's not celebrating, she's calculating. One of her trusted allies slipped away too early and spoke to someone she didn't invite. It's a small detail, easily missed, but Bertha notices. She always does. In that moment, her triumph is tinted with suspicion. She's climbing high, but now she knows the higher she goes, the lonelier and riskier it becomes. Meanwhile, George Russell receives confirmation of his worst fear. The anonymous letter was right. A partner he's known for years has been meeting with his biggest rival. In the final minutes of the episode, George doesn't explode. He doesn't confront. He simply says one word to his assistant: prepare. It's a quiet storm warning. A reminder that while Bertha fights her battles in silk and diamonds, George fights his in contracts and cold strategy. And now, he's ready to strike back. Oscar Van Ryn, still trying to regain control of his narrative, leaves the ball more exposed than ever. The heiress from Chicago doesn't just have dirt on him, she has a plan. And Oscar is not used to being someone else's pawn. As he rides away in his carriage, he stares out the window with something rare in his eyes: doubt. He might be charming, but charm can't fix everything. In fact, it might have just led him into a trap. And Marian, sweet, torn Marian, returns home and finds a letter on her bed. It's from Clara, not an apology, but a confession. In it, Clara tells the truth about what really happened before her outburst. About the man who betrayed her. About the names she never said aloud. The letter shakes Marian. It confirms her suspicions and makes her realize she's been playing a much smaller role in a much bigger story. The episode closes on her face, lit only by the soft flicker of a candle, her eyes wide with realization. Then there's Peggy Scott. She walks through the doors of the rival newspaper office. Manuscript in hand, her steps are slow but certain. She's made her decision. The fight for truth, even in a world built on illusion, is worth it. Her story, her real voice, will finally be heard. And it might just cause the city's most powerful people to tremble. As episode 3 ends, there is no explosion, no collapse, just the steady sound of power changing hands, slowly, silently. Bold moves don't always make noise. Sometimes the most dangerous shifts happen in the quiet when no one is looking. But in this world, every glance, every promise, every step across a marble floor is a move on a board where only the ruthless win. And now, the game is no longer about who belongs. It's about who dares.